Sorry, we were a little late to the party. How much money is this going to save the state of Wisconsin by eliminating these two offices?
Well, it's untold. As I said, my salary, the deputy secretary's salary, the rent that we pay on the office, automation is eventually going to lead to a reduction in the number of people we need to process the claims. In order, we'll be able to process more claims with less people. But once again, I think the greatest growth potential for this office is in unclaimed property and positioning it in exactly the right agency so that we can grow the amount of unclaimed property that we collect now.
So you're not eliminating the state treasurer, you're just eliminating the elected office of state treasurer.
Well, I'm eliminating the elected office of state treasurer. The duties that are involved, they're across the state. There's many agencies that do great work for the people of Wisconsin. This agency also does great work for the state of Wisconsin. We don't elect a president of the DMV. We do not elect. There are many, many offices that are just handled administratively and are serving the people of Wisconsin. And this is one of those offices that can continue to do the good work that it does and does not need an elected constitutional officer to run it.
With the Board Commissioner of Public Lands, you have Lieutenant Governor and essentially State Superintendent taking over for the roles. Is there any specific reason as to why those were chosen, other than just being essentially constitutional officers who might be next in line?
Sure, there's a very good reason for it. Essentially, if I am successful in this endeavor, and the people of Wisconsin get their chance to vote in 2013, and they make their voice heard, those are the last two constitutional officers we have to take the place on the Board of Public Lands. There are no other choices.
Do you know of any other states that are doing this or planning to do something similar in the near future?
I know, I believe Minnesota does not have an elected treasurer. I think that Texas has done away with their elected treasurer. And there are many states that do not have an elected treasurer. Those are the two that come to mind, though. So, as a matter of fact, in Nebraska, they just had this issue on the ballot. And in this particular case, the people of Nebraska voted to keep the treasurer. Now, the treasurer in Nebraska had a lot more responsibility, had a lot more duties. There's a saying in the treasurer's trade. If you've been in one treasurer's office, you've been in one treasurer's office. Some are very powerful. For example, in Illinois, the treasurer is term limited to 2 terms because of the massive power that they wield. I can assure you this office does not wield any massive power.
Can you elaborate on, and I know Greg asked this, but it says here that you want to eliminate the offices at the end of a certain time. You want to eliminate them, but then you were saying it doesn't have to be eliminated, just the constitutional officer. So the office would not be eliminated.
The duties of the program would be redistributed, and hopefully, with the time that we have involved here, would be intelligently redistributed so that they can bring the maximum amount of impact to the common school fund, thereby lessening the burden on local taxpayers.
When you say, would they be redistributed to another state agency? Would the state treasurer's duties then become, say, the Department of Revenue's duties? Wouldn't that save more money than just eliminating the election for the office of treasurer?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think that in 2 months we've had enough time to study exactly, but I have thought of the Department of Revenue with regard to unclaimed property, and I'm going to explore that during my time in office. And there are other agencies, LGIP, which is a $3 billion entity. Basically, it's a one-person bank. I met with some of the county treasurers the day after the budget was released, and they expressed a bit of a concern under the current proposal to put it into the Department of Administration. And their main concern was responsiveness, because the Department of Administration is so large. Now, Is the Department of Administration the right place to put it, or is it not? I haven't had enough time to study that. And I think that when we're dealing with the constitutional office, we need to give it the respect that it deserves before we eliminate it. I have a strong belief in allowing the voters of Wisconsin to make that choice.
So when you had this, what seemed at least a disagreement with Governor Walker's plan to sort of move portions of the duties of the Treasurer's Office to, I think, Department of Financial institutions, for instance, your issue is simply that as long as the constitutional office exists, those duties should still be respected and it should be up to the voters, or?
Absolutely, and here's why. When I filed my papers in November of 2009, I campaigned on all the issues that the treasurer handles. We had much discussion between the candidates about all of these issues. We talked about LGIP, we talked about EdVest, we talked about unclaimed property. And the voters heard that message. They learned what the treasurer's office does. And then when I won the primary, that same discussion continued between me and my opponent. So in every interview I did on the radio or on the television, we talked about all the duties of the office. So the voters would have the education that they need to make a responsible decision. So I have a principled disagreement to weaken the office, in other words, to make it more likely, because that's not what we talked about in the campaign. And I like to give, I want to give the voters an honest choice as it was presented to them in the election. I never mentioned, when I get there, I'm going to call for this to be pulled and for that to be pulled. I only talked about how we needed a constitutional amendment to eliminate the office. And that's just the fact. I can't wave a magic wand and make it go away. So the office cannot end. There's just no other way around it until the end of my term in 2014.
So, but if the state superintendent of public instruction, for example, becomes a political appointee and takes the place of people who were elected by the voters, how is that giving the people of Wisconsin a voice?
The state public instruction is elected every 4 years.
But if that person becomes appointed by the governor instead, and takes the place of...
The Board of Public Lands requires 3 constitutional officers, and the Department of Public Instruction is an elected constitutional office.
I know right now, but that might change.
Right. So I don't see it's not a question of taking the right away from the voters. As a matter of fact, the Department of Public Instruction probably has more synergy with the school system, since we provide funding for the school library system, than I do as treasurer.
And you said that these are the last 2 constitutional officers.
Right.
That we have.
Right. And as I said, in the event that the voters, because it has to be considered on a separate issue, because there are more than one entity involved, I mean, it is possible that the voters would vote to eliminate one and not the other. I don't think so. I won by 55% of the vote. And I believe that the voters are ready to eliminate these 2 offices. But it's just a natural succession. We need constitutional officers to fill these once these voids are made.
But if, for instance, voters decide to eliminate one office and not the other, why was it decided that Lieutenant Governor would fill that first post and State Superintendent would be the second, if you're saying that State Superintendent would have a little more proximity to those issues?
Because we all are aware that the Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin does not have very many formal duties. And this would give her more of a formal duty within the government of Wisconsin. This Department of Public Instruction was second because he has quite a large constitutional duty. His office, certainly, when you talk about the hundreds and hundreds of school systems across our state, that he's pretty busy.